It's 12 o'clock noon in Los Angeles, and you know what that means, don't you? It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Woohoo! Hello, all you folks out there. How are you? Good to see you. I am very excited today because I'm going to interview somebody that I've known for like 10 years, and I hate to say it, but he's an adorable guy. I don't mean adorably cute. I mean, he's easy to adore because he's such a good person with a great attitude. And he wrote a book which has inspired the title for today's show. So, you want to become a media composer? And I am speaking, of course, of Mr. Adonis Aletras. Hello, Adonis. He's holding up the... there you go. All right, let me make sure... Whoops. Stop clapping, you people. Hi, Adonis. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing? It's thank you for having me. It's been quite a while since we chatted, and it's good to see you. Good hearing your voice, and you have an infectious smile too, Michael.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's great to see you, and I want to make sure the chat room is working. It's not moving, but oh well, they'll catch up with us. Anyway. Adonis sent me an email probably pre-COVID, maybe a year before COVID, and I want to read this email. This was part of my inspiration. I bumped into this email online, but it reminded me of another one I'll tell you about in a minute. So this one says, Dear Michael and everyone else, I joined Taxi 7 to 8 years ago. Through Taxi Forwards, many doors were opened for me. At the moment, I have over 2,000 cues signed across dozens of libraries and have thousands of placements on network and cable TV. I really can't give a specific number of placements, although we're going to talk about that later, because it's impossible. I lost count years ago. Everybody would like to lose count. I've gathered enough credits, 100 plus US TV shows, that nowadays I do custom work for established Hollywood composers. Not bad for somebody living in Europe. That's true. That would be good for anybody living anywhere, Adonis. At Taxi's Road Rally Convention, I met my lifelong friends and collaborators, Chuck Schlachter, John Mazet, Matt Hurt, and so many others. Composers, songwriters, lyricists, the list just goes on. At the last Road Rally, I mentored members for the first time, and without exception, I told every single one of them that Taxi, combined with hard work and tenacity, of course, works. Signed, Adonis Aletras. So, I saw that. I don't remember why I saw it or where I saw it, but I saw it. It popped up on my computer screen. I was probably looking for quotable quotes or something. And that reminded me of a time when Adonis, I can't remember if you called me or if you emailed me, but I remember that Greece and Cyprus were going through like a national bankruptcy period, and money was just horribly tight for everybody. And you called me up, and you were so sweet and so, like, you went from heartbroken to happy and effusive in the same call. And he said something that really resonated with me, and that is, money has been so tight around our household because of the economic situation here that it's time for our little daughter to grow out of her crib and move into a big girl bed, and frankly, we couldn't afford one. And then, as if an act of God, a check showed up for my ASCAP or BMI quarterly payment, and it paid for the bed, and everything is great, and it wouldn't have happened without Taxi. And as I was telling Adonis before we went live on the show, that was one of 3 times where I had to shut the door to my office and have a little cry. You know, it hit me right here, buddy. So thank you for telling me that story, because I'll never forget it as long as I live.
Well, it's all true, and actually, I have twin daughters, so we had to buy 2 beds.
Oh, there you go! Wow, how old are they now?
They're teenagers with everything that goes with it.
I always say my daughters adored me until they turned 12 or 13, and then you get the eye roll, the shoulder shrug. You go from being their superhero dad to oh well.
Every day.
Yep, it's every parent goes through it, especially dads in that regard. But
Yeah,
you know, because of your hard work, and dedication to the craft of composing and your tenacity and all that stuff. I'm sure that you can buy them really nice beds now, so I'm very proud of you for that. You've earned it. Did you always want to be a composer for a living?
My career in music actually started playing live. I'm a guitar player, and I've done it. I had done that once I was out of Berkeley. I started at the Berkeley College of Music, and I came back home. I did the live scene for quite a bit, and at some point I really got tired of all the everything that has to go with playing live, setting up and rehearsing and breaking down and equipment breaking down. At some point we had a regular gig in a nightclub, and that nightclub got burned down, and
Yikes.
we lost all. I know, we lost all our equipment and so much money into that inferno. But I was always writing music, and not just for my own, just for the bands that I was playing in. I was doing all the arrangements, and also doing some stuff of my own. And a dear friend of mine who was also who always listened to music, and he really liked what I was doing, and many times he had told me, you have to get your music out there. You just can't keep your music just for the band, or just for yourself, or your family. You have to get your music out there at some point. And I guess I listened to him. I don't regret ever listening to him, because I wouldn't be where I am now if I hadn't had that slight push to that one bit of encouragement that somebody needs at some stage in their career to say, okay, maybe if one person likes my music, maybe they and it's not my wife or my daughters, then maybe there is something to it. So then I started doing it more often and more often, and then there was Taxi and all sorts of other things that happened, and here I am now doing it the whole time.
It's an amazing story because of where you live. I mean, it would be amazing without that, but it's more amazing because Cyprus is a tiny little island. One of the reasons that I'm thrilled to be doing this show with Adonis is because we're in the same time zone this week. I'm about an hour away from him by airplane right now, and so I had already had the idea to invite him to be on the show, and then I realized I was going to be over in his neighborhood, so I thought it'd be perfect. But Cyprus is tiny. I mean, it's like the state of New Jersey is way bigger than Cyprus. So the fact that you're succeeding as a globally, I don't know if you're globally, I'm sure you may not get stopped in the shopping mall, but you're a globally heard artist making music and composer. I was going to ask you later about the number, but you mentioned this number before we went live, and we were just catching up for old time's sake. Did I understand you correctly when you said that you've had 8 to 9 million performances of your music per year?
That is correct. Yeah, that is correct. The last 3 years, it's been up there. Yeah.
Up there? I mean, the 8 to 9 million is astronomically up there. That's incredible. Good for you, man.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
I mean, most people, I'm sure a lot of people watching this is like, that's it, I'm out, I give up, I'll never catch up with that dude. But you know what? 10 years ago, you weren't there either.
Yeah.
You were, I remember you were full of enthusiasm, and probably your best trait was your willingness to work hard at it. You didn't expect anybody to hand it out to you, and look at you now. Wow.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you very much.
And at the time that you wrote this email, which was probably 2 or 3 years ago, you had 2,000 cues signed across dozens of libraries. Has that number gone up as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Of course, I've slowed down quite a bit writing exclusively for libraries because now I get to do actual TV shows. But I've never ever stopped writing library music. The great thing about writing library music is that you can do it anytime you want at your own leisure. There's usually no deadlines, no one forcing you uh, to be like, if you don't do it, if we don't beat the deadline, then we're going to lose the gig. Library music is not like that at all. And I know many people, even good friends of mine, who do write specifically for library music, and they make a very nice, comfortable living doing it, and it doesn't even feel like a job, and it shouldn't feel like a job because
Right.
you're doing what you love, you know. And but yeah, I still write. I'm probably up to close to 2,600 now. I stopped counting, like you said before. I don't. It's impossible to keep track anymore.
Well, in a little bit, we're going to talk about that, the transition going from a guy who made library music to a guy who's now composing for specific TV shows. And I'm sure that our audience is going to be very interested to hear how that happened and
Sure.
what it's like to do that. Did you join Taxi to become a rock star or to become a composer?
I joined Taxi, as I said before, that good dear friend of mine who told me to get my music out there. I joined Taxi to get my music out there. At the time, I had no clue what I was doing. I just needed to write to get the music out there, and at the time, Taxi seemed like the perfect vehicle to help me to do it. It's I felt that, especially living in Cyprus, that and with all the wonderful avenues that the internet was opening at the time, we're talking 10 years ago, with all those wonderful things happening, I felt that if since I cannot move away from Cyprus and leave my family, and I'm going to stay in Cyprus, and that will be my base, I will need the vehicle, no pun intended, to help me get my music out there. And I did my due diligence. I looked around, and Taxi seemed the perfect place to do that. And I joined. I tried in the beginning, writing for the listings and doing the best job I could. It didn't happen overnight, and I want to stress that. I cannot stress that enough. That it does not happen overnight. There's a learning curve. There's production chops have to get up to a certain level, and there's also an art to reading the briefs and understanding what the clients require of you, and that was a learning curve for me as well. And it definitely is for many people who try to get into writing and trying to become media composers. We're in the service business. We servicing other people's music needs, and once the better we become at understanding those needs, then the sooner, and of course being able to fulfilling those needs with our music,
Right.
then the faster the doors open. And it took me 6 or 7 months of trial and error with Taxi, but I got the first forwards, then the first signings, and then I got encouraged even more, much more so than when my friend was telling me just get your music out there, because not it wasn't just the music getting out there. Now it was out there, but it was actually getting signed.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was doing something right, you know, and that was so encouraging to me. And then more more listings. I tried. I wrote more. I got rejected more. I got forwarded more. I got forwarded even more. I got rejected even more. But it didn't stop me ever. And and it's the my numbers kept going up. More signings, more placements, even more signings, even more placement. It's almost like it's a snowball effect. You have to think
Right.
of it like that.
You know, it's funny. A lot of people join Taxi thinking that they love their music so much, they're very talented, and they probably are, and they anticipate that they're going to make a few submissions, and they hold on to the old paradigm of like getting discovered by one, you know, cigar smoking record executive. I'm going to make you a star, kid. And they wait for that moment, and it doesn't happen. They don't understand. What you're describing is exactly what all of your other successful Taxi members have realized and gone through, which is write, submit, forget, and repeat. You know, I mean, that statement or that phrase was developed by Taxi members for a reason, and you did it perfectly. And it's so heartwarming because I've known you since you were a puppy. You know what I mean?
Well, there's I to this day I still hold on to that, the write, submit, forget, repeat. I you know, there's I cannot think of another way to convince people. There is no other way. There is no other way. You really have to write. You really have to repeat, submit, get your music out there. Like my friend told me 50 million years ago, get your music out there. Don't just do it for yourself. You know, if you want to work in media, you have to get your music out there. So if it means joining Taxi, if it means traveling to go to a different country, to go to a music conference like the Road Rally or the ASCAP show, the ASCAP or the BMI conferences, there's so many wonderful places where you can get your music out there and have people listen to you, to your music. Because what good does it do to you if your music sits idle on a hard drive?
Right. And you know what? Most music on hard drives is incomplete. And there's a reason that Stephen Pressfield, the author, made an observation which I think is so right on the money, which is people that leave stuff on their hard drive and don't get it out there, it's not complete. Therefore, it can't be judged and it can't be turned down. I'm working on a song right now. It's awesome. Nobody will ever hear it, so they can't judge it and tell me that it's not awesome. So it takes a lot of bravery to start completing stuff and giving it to somebody and knowing full well that you're going to get judged. They're either going to go, it's good enough, I want it, or it's not right, and I don't. And that's a tough line to cross.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And you, one thing I've learned over the years is that you really have to develop a thick skin. And one is you have to develop a thick skin and not take anything personally, because 9 out of 10 times you're probably going to hear a no than a yes. Obviously, for me, it wasn't 9 out of 10; it was probably 5 out of 10. But still, to this day, I get no's, I get rejections. I don't mind one bit. I'm always thinking, the next time I'm going to do one better. I'm not going to let this break my heart. I do not get attached to any of the music that I write, because the moment you start attaching yourself and your feelings to whatever it is you do, then the moment you get rejected, it's going to hurt you. And I cannot afford to get hurt. I just want, okay, this didn't work, I'm going to write another one, I'll do another one. And
What a
And then
great
that
attitude.
it, as yeah, and the other thing is, you have to be uh, open and gracious towards criticism. Very, I cannot stress that enough. That not taking anything personally and opening yourself to hearing other people's opinion of why, if you're lucky enough to get someone's opinion on why whatever you submitted did not work, then I'm all for it, because there's no other way to learn. This is not the stuff they teach you in school. There's no
Right.
school is so kind. School is so kind. The industry is not kind at all.
They didn't have a class on on developing thick skin at Berkeley.
I don't think they have such a class anywhere in the world, because you have to. It has to happen to you. It has to happen to you, and the more times it happens to you, then the thicker the skin you develop. That's how it works.
Wow, maybe I should do a taxi TV on growing thick skin. I think I'm going to do that. I remember the first time you came to a road rally, you came running up to me, and I think you threw your arms around me. I'm so happy to meet you. I'm so happy to be here. You were off the charts with enthusiasm. And all I could think of is this guy's from a tiny little island off the coast of Greece. He's flown like 7,000 or 8,000 miles to come here. He knows nobody here. And within 3 hours, I saw you hanging out with like Chuck Schlachter and Matt Hurt and the boys. And it's just having the courage to come that far and spend that kind of money. I'm sure that plane ticket was like $1,000 to $2,000, and the hotels, what, 130 or 150 a night. So that was an expense, and it could have been the case where you got off the plane, walked in the hotel, and went, "Oh my God, this is a letdown. These people aren't. They're not friendly. They're not helpful. There's no sense of community." You found all that to be not true, and integrated yourself perfectly. So that's another part of you I'll never forget, is the look on your face, the sheer joy in that first moment when I met you at the road rally. The only way to describe it was just that right there. That face was what I saw. How long did it take you to start earning your full income as a composer? Like where, okay, I can support my family now doing nothing but making music.
Okay. Since joining Taxi, I would say 4 years. Like I said, it was a gradual process. It wasn't something that happened overnight, and a lot of times, especially with back-end payments, one thing to keep in mind is that even though something may get let's say I have a cue on a TV show tonight, which I probably do, but
I'm sure you do.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's say if it gets played tonight, it doesn't necessarily mean that you will get paid tomorrow morning.
I'm shocked.
It takes sometimes it takes months, sometimes it takes over a year to see any of that money coming through, and this has nothing to do with it's just the way things work with BMI and ASCAP and PRS and all those the so-called PROs, the performing rights organizations. That's how it works. That's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is that the way that the PROs get notified is it's from the TV stations who actually send in the cue sheets that your music has been included in, and if there's any delay on their behalf, then it's the delay gets carried on to the PROs. The PROs then have to do all the administrative work. So it's not a process that just again, it doesn't happen overnight. Now, over the years, all this stuff starts accumulating, and it's a trickle effect that, again, the snowball effect that I said before, that it gets bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger, and then it comes to a point that it reaches a plateau, and then you know pretty much every quarter how much money you will be expecting from the quarterly payments. But again, it takes years to to come to that level, and that speaking on behalf of many of the other successful composers that I know as well.
Absolutely. Every one of you tells that same story exactly like you just told it. Although I've got to say, if it only took you 4 years to get to the point where you were starting to make regular income to where you could support your family, that was pretty quick. Most people take 5 to 10. So, but I know that's because of your commitment, and you just have a ton of energy. Nothing was going to stop you. That was obvious when I met you at the road rally, and after you quit hugging me and walked away, I remember thinking, nothing's going to stop that guy. He's just you're like a truck full of gravel rolling downhill with no brakes. You know, you were going to succeed one way or the other.
Thank you so much. I wrote so much music. I spent so much time in this where you see where you look right now. I mean, okay, I'll be honest with you. Now I have back problems because of all this time I've spent in the studio. But I just wrote so much music, and I'm not I'm not referring just to the music that actually got signed, because a lot of that stuff never got signed and never got used, and it probably never will. But it was all part of my process, and I'm not saying that everybody should follow that process, but in my case it worked, and the tenacity and the devotion and the endless hours of trying out things and recording and writing and submitting and repeating the whole process, it just worked for me.
Well, obviously it worked well. So you just mentioned earlier that you don't do much production music anymore, that you've transitioned into composing scores for TV shows, which I think is something that virtually every music library composer would love to transition into. So can you tell us how that happened, how that came about, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of like day-to-day workflow and stuff.
Sure, absolutely. In my travels to the United States and cheers. At the road rally, I've met some very interesting people, established composers who were just either like me or a few steps above me, or established composers. I'm not gonna be very revealing in terms of names and actual details.
Yeah, please. I would prefer that you're not, just because people watch this that aren't taxi members. They're not always. They don't always have the best industry etiquette. So yeah, don't drop any names, please. Oh no, you froze.
Yeah, I won't.
Okay, you're there. Good.
All right, good. Some of those people that I met, I kept in touch over the years, and when they needed help, I reached out to them. Of course, it wasn't just because you met somebody, it doesn't mean that they were going to give you work right away. You have to establish trust.
Right, or ever. Yeah.
Or ever, yeah.
Yeah.
So that trust was established with me coming, giving music to them, and proving that I could actually do it. One of those guys who offered me work in the very beginning this is a great story because it was like he sent me a bunch of cues and he's like, can you do more of these? And when I listened to those cues, they were brutal, man. I mean, it was
Brutally good.
yeah, brutally good. Yeah.
Yes.
And I'm like, how can I ever do this? You should ask my wife. I went home that night and I'm like, there's no way I can pull this off. There's no way I can pull it off. But I did, and I sent those cues back. I mean, my version of the cues that I was sent, and the guy was like, "Okay, you got the job. Let's do an episode together." And then an episode became 2 episodes, and then 2 episodes became 3 episodes. That's how trust is established. When you're in the trenches with someone and you prove that you can meet the deadlines and you can actually produce what they're asking you to do.
And I was shocked to learn that oftentimes people who are composers of one TV show are then offered another TV show because everybody wants to hire somebody who's currently busy because that lends credibility. So now the first composer on that show, who's probably the original composer that did the pilot, has to either turn down the work on the second show or say yes, because you never want to turn down work. And that's where you get the phone call. It's like, hey, I've got more work than I can do on this show. So they start incorporating you slowly to work with the lead composer. And that's how the relationship grew?
Yeah, pretty much. You have to realize that, like you said, a lot of those people especially the LA-based composers, the competition is so fierce. It's amazingly fierce, and once they're offered a gig, they will not turn it down. They would rather hire 3 or 4 other guys, either on their team, in-house at their studio, or have people like me doing it remotely. And they of course, it's their name, but it doesn't matter to me because you get paid, plus you get put on the cue sheet, and you get back end as well, which yeah, of course, yeah. So it's a win-win situation for everybody. Now, another thing that has worked in my favor over the years is that because I live in Europe, because I live in Cyprus, and we live in different time zones, it means that the people in Los Angeles can go to sleep while I work.
Right.
Yeah. So it's an ongoing process that never stops. They get twice as much work done with me, or probably other European composers working at the time that they're resting, that they need to get their sleep, they need to be with their families. So while I work, they rest. When I rest, they work. So it pretty much it's a good situation for everyone to be in.
It's funny that you mentioned that because,
as we said before,
go ahead.
Yeah, the successful composers, they sometimes they get so much on their plate that it's impossible for them to keep up. Especially with reality TV shows that are wall to wall with music, it's just humanly impossible for one person to be able to pull that off. So you need help, and you have to give up something in order to you need to give up 50% of something to have 100% of something else,
Absolutely.
So and that 100% being the gig. So they will go to the producers and say, no, of course I'm going to do it. Yeah, give me more. So people like me, and hopefully other people, get hired because of that.
I have a very close friend named Adam Zelkind. I don't know if you've ever met him or not, but at one point, he had 5 shows that he was composing. Before reality shows used library music, he would actually score top to bottom full episodes, and he was doing 5 shows at once. He damn near physically killed himself from exhaustion.
Yeah.
Made a ton of money, but was just exhausted. I mean, made a lot of money. So now let's talk about...
I met Adam, actually.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about how scoring for episodic TV is different than creating music for libraries.
Yeah, that's a good point to get across. Like I mentioned earlier, library music, you do it at your leisure. You can do it at your leisure. I mean, usually there's no deadlines with library music. Of course, still the quality is, especially nowadays, the quality is just as good. I'm not gonna say that one is better than the other. It's not at all. It's just that when you write music for episodic TV for TV shows, first of all, you're part of a team, and whether that team is the lead composer or his other composers and yourself, the first thing that usually happens is that you have to have a common template so that the music has a unifying quality to it. I mean, we pretty much have the same libraries. We have we even have same presets that we use in many of the shows. So establishing identical templates or near identical templates is very important, and you have to be able right away to either purchase the libraries that are going to be used. If you don't have them already, you're going to have to be able to get them and put them in your rig immediately. Learn as fast as you can, because some of that stuff you just can't rely on the presets the whole time. You have to do some tweaking to get it to sound like everyone else. So you're establishing templates, and you work in conjunction with a team. You're not by yourself. That's a huge difference. Another difference is that there's always deadlines, and I'm going to use again the word that I used before, the word brutal. The deadlines sometimes can be very brutal, and there is really no excuse if you cannot make the deadline. There isn't. You could be sick, you could be dying. If you're part of the team and the lead composer has to deliver at a certain date, then the whole team has to deliver with him or her. There's no, you cannot back out. So once you
not even during COVID.
Well,
I'm surprised. It's like, I've got COVID. They're intubating me now in the hospital, putting me on the respirator. Doesn't matter. Deadline's tomorrow at noon.
A good friend of mine who lives, with episodic TV, death is not even an excuse.
That's funny. Okay, so tell us. I'm curious. Do more than one of you work on the same cue, or do you guys look at a show and go, okay, so this hour of television has 57 cues. I'm just pulling a number out of thin air right now. So you're going to do a third, he'll do a third, and she'll do a third. And is that how it's broken up, or do multiple people work on the same cue? How does it go?
There's it works in different ways. One way is that let's say you have a 40-minute episode. I might get the first half or the second half, and the lead composer or whoever else is on the team will get the half that I'm not getting. I could be given the entire episode. And usually when I'm given either half or entire or even 10 minutes of something, it's me doing it. It's not someone else. I'm not working on a cue with someone else. It's my music that, of course, if I get asked to revise something, I would gladly revise something. Or if the lead composer feels that they need to add something on top of something that I did, then of course it goes without saying that it'll happen. Of course, another thing that might happen is that my cues might get rejected, and I'm fine with that too. But yeah.
So, is there I'm sure there's a sonic identity to the show. So you and the lead composer have to be simpatico, and you would almost have to think like husbands and wives that have been married a long time. You know how your wife is going to answer a question oftentimes, or how she might react to something. So when you're writing, you are writing in the style that the lead composer would write in if they had time?
Yeah, and a lot of times, and this is, I'm glad you asked that. A lot of times, the producers of the shows send us music ahead of time that they feel music that we haven't written, that is, from other composers that they feel are a good fit for the show. When I mentioned that example before, that I was given 12 cues to listen to and make something out of them, that was exactly the case.
Wow, interesting. And I never knew that. I learned something, all those times I think, oh, I've interviewed so many people, I know everything. I don't know everything. And I just learned something from you, which is it is important for you guys, meaning guys, gals, whomever, that are the composers, to have virtually identical libraries of sounds, because you can't have like a really... something that sounds really strident. Like one cue is strings that are recorded close and they sound strident, and the room doesn't have a lot of reverb, and the next cue that comes up is very lush and not strident and got a lot of natural reverb in the room. So that would seem inconsistent. It would get your attention, which is, you don't want the music to get your attention, you want it to enhance the scene. So you guys really have to think about that. So do you talk to the other composer and say, okay, I'm getting ready to do my half of the show. Which strings did you use? Or which orchestral percussion did you use? Or which synth patches did you use? Do those discussions take place?
Yeah, those discussions take place before we record our first note, because like I said, we have to be consistent. The consistency needs to be throughout. And if at any point in the process anyone feels that there's deviation from that consistency, then it's something that needs to be addressed immediately, because once the cues are out the door and they go to the editing bay of the editors and the producers, and they will hear that inconsistency, and they will immediately slap your wrist and say, hey, what's going on, Fortunately, This hasn't happened to me or to us or to any team that I worked in, but it's a situation that is always worked out before the first note gets recorded.
Interesting. And are you at a point with, let's say you're working with somebody who's the lead composer, they were on the show before you got brought in, are you given the ability to say, hey, Mr. Lead Composer, my friend, my co-worker, that cue you sent over, it's not as good as the other stuff. Can you also encourage them to improve?
Well, it's not for me to say. I mean, if the producers are happy with what we sent them, then it's their call. It's not really mine. And ultimately, if again, as I said before, we're in the service business, we we need to make sure that whoever is on the receiving end is happy with what. It has nothing to do with how I feel about something. Even with my music, it really has nothing to do with
Right.
how I feel about it. It's how they feel about it. Does the best words you can hear from a producer or a director of a movie or a TV show, it's just two simple words when we're a composer, and those words are, "It works."
I love it. It works.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's great. Go ahead.
If it works for them, then it works for us. That's all I can say.
Absolutely. Right before I left on this trip, I was cleaning up my office a little bit so I didn't come home to a mess when I get back. And I picked up a stack of books, and your book was on the top of the pile. I'd actually held it up grab it. Maybe it was during the road rally I held it up. So you want to become a media composer. And what's cool about it is you went out and interviewed a bunch of top-line working composers. They're not necessarily famous names that the average person on the street would know, like John Williams or Hans Zimmer, but these are all well-paid, highly credible, very professional people, composers who have their music on some incredible TV shows and films. So when you told me you were doing this project, I thought to myself, he's so smart, because I started the Taxi newsletter because somebody said to me, if an A&R person at a record label won't return your phone call, leave a message with their assistant saying you want to interview them. And everybody will call back for an interview. And so I thought you were brilliant to call up and say, hey, I'm writing a book and I'm interviewing, and all you have to do is get the first one, and then you say to the second one, so-and-so did it, and they go, okay, how's Tuesday afternoon at 3? So all that said, is there like a common thing that you noticed about all these successful composers? Do they all have a personality trait in common? Do they all have a work ethic in common? Or were they just born so talented right out of their mommy's tummies that they were destined to be great? What did you notice?
Okay, I'll tell you what almost all of them said is that 9 out of 10 times, talent has nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it. Yeah. Of course, talent has something to do with it, but talent without, like we said before, getting the music out there, getting yourself out there, putting yourself out there, and basically never saying no to any opportunity that comes your way, and doing it as much as possible, then your talent will shine through. Because talent without all those things that I mentioned before, it's like being buried 6 feet under, you know. And most of those people say that obviously all of them are talented to be able to do what they do successfully. There is a great element of talent in everything that they do.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, though, most of them would argue and say that they've let's say they've done tons of free demos, tons of them. They wrote library music. They honed their chops in many ways. They wrote music for student projects. They wrote and they still write every day, and that's one thing. Going back to what I said before, that I was writing every day, I still do, of course. But you know, writing music, it's like the athletes. There's a muscle. There's a muscle that you have to work on it to get yourself to the point that you actually become competitive. That's how athletes do it. that's how we do it. And all of these people have been writing for many years, and they still write every day to this day. So that was a common thread to all of them. All of them. They keep saying that. Another thing that keeps coming up in the book the whole time is about approaching the whole idea of being a composer, not in the romantic idea, ooh, I'm a music composer, but approaching it as a business. You have to see it as a business. You have to learn about contracts. You have to learn how to be in a room with people and behave like a business person. You have to especially those people who are in Hollywood. Hollywood is politics, nothing else. And the people who get work, they get, for one person that gets work, there's 200 others that don't, and they're just easily, yeah. And they're just as good, they're just as talented. But it's a combination of things that you have to be talented, you have to be a likable person, you have to have your business skills, and be able to carry yourself in a meeting in a courteous and professional manner, and when you're given a contract, of course you're probably gonna have a manager or a lawyer to look it up, and it's a good process to do that. But the business aspect of things is very important. And the last thing that I would say that is a recurring theme in the book is that of being an entrepreneur, because what we do, writing music for media, basically is a commodity. So you have to be able to sell your commodity. And in order to sell your commodity, you have to be an entrepreneur and know how to market yourself, how to market your commodity, and be not be afraid of the competition, because there's thousands of others that can do it just as well as you, but be able to be in a situation where once you're in the meeting where you're going to market yourself, do it effectively. And that's being entrepreneurial is all about.
I find it fascinating that you bring that up. First of all, it's an important subject around Taxi's office. So important that many of the libraries we work with have asked us to put language in the listings that say, unless you've had the experience of working with production music libraries before and know the drill on contracts, etc., we'd strongly prefer that you don't submit to this. That's the libraries asking us to include that language to our members. And our members are upset by that, and rightfully so. If I paid for a service and 10 or 20% of the people requesting music through the service were saying, hey, we only want experienced composers, they're not saying it because they want people who are, experienced means you're a better composer, which it may or it may not, but they want experienced people who aren't going to do what I'm going to describe to you now, which is somebody, a Taxi member, had 51 pieces of music signed to a library. It was a non-exclusive library. At some point, another library heard his material and said, I'd like to sign it exclusively. So he called up the non-exclusive library and said, I want to take all 51 tracks out of my library because my contract says that I can. And now I'm going to sign them with this exclusive company. So even though contractually he could do that, it's still bad etiquette because, first of all, he burned a bridge with that first library. And if he were really smart and savvy about the business and entrepreneurial, he would have known that the correct answer would be, you know what? I did those cues 2 years ago. I'm a better composer now. Let me create 50 cues for you that are like those cues, but even better. And now you've got 100 of them in 2 libraries. And it also forced the first non-exclusive library into a situation where they had to reach out to everybody that had that music on a drive in their edit bays and say, please remove this cue, that cue, the other cue, and go down the line. That's an embarrassment.
Yeah, well, you see, Michael, something like that creates an untenable situation, and it's so unprofessional, and so it just it not only burns the bridge, it just creates chaos. It's much more productive and much more wise, like you said. Write new music. Do not burn the bridge. Don't be a moron about it, you know. and keep your connection with the non-exclusive library. Write new stuff for the other company. And one thing I learned over the years is that the more eggs you have spread in many different baskets, then the more income you will have from all those different baskets. Why kick the basket away? That's crazy. Why would you do that? I mean, just think how you can expand, not how you can contract, because what you just described right now is shrinking what you have, not expanding what you have.
That's very well said. That's a great point. When you first started out as a taxi member, did you make some of the same mistakes that other new members make? For instance, not reading the briefs or the listings carefully enough and submitting stuff that hit one of the points. Well, yes, it's mid-tempo jazz. I'm sending it in. Yeah, but they wanted mid-tempo jazz from this region or that time period, and I didn't pay attention. So did you make those newbie mistakes, or were you already experienced enough that you didn't?
I made more mistakes than I can fathom. And I'm glad I did. Because if I hadn't made those mistakes and I kept the same mindset that, okay, whatever I do is right, which obviously wasn't, then I wouldn't have learned. And it's very important to look, to this day, it's important to be able to read a brief and decipher it for what it really is. It could be from a library, it could be from a producer of a TV show, and I get those briefs today from the people that I work with, because they share those briefs with me. Mm-hmm. And believe me, they're not that different from the briefs that the taxi publishers.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, because in all probability, all that music is going to end up in a TV show or a movie or something. So you have to be able to make sense of what is being asked of you. And if you think it's not clear enough, I guess you can ask. But at the end of the day, read it once, read it twice, read it 3 times, and try to because when you read it, then you probably, let's say that they're asking you to do Greek music. Okay, Greek music. There's the Greek music from the 20s. There's repetigo Greek music. There's all kinds of Greek music. So, are you going to listen to every piece of Greek music that was written ever in existence? No, you're gonna have to read the brief and try to make sense of what they're asking you. If they're looking for, if you're looking for like to write like Zorba, then listen to that and do that.
Right. Speaking of which, you told me before we went live on the air that you once did a dramedy klezmer piece, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Dramedy klezmer.
Yeah.
Klezmer is Fiddler on the Roof music, so a dramedy version of that. And you wrote 2 of them. They both got signed, and one of them has made you quite a bit of money over the years, which I find hysterical. I mean, I didn't know. I go to a lot of Jewish weddings. I've heard a lot of klezmer music in my lifetime, but I had no idea there was such a thing as dramedy klezmer. And look at you. You made money with it. You're still making money from it.
It was a taxi listing, Michael. Yeah.
There you go. So
Yeah.
many of them, speaking of taxi, many of the musicians who joined taxi quit after just the first year. And if we, call them up randomly and say, why didn't you renew? The answer is inevitably the same as I didn't make my $300 back. I thought I would pay $300 and make $1,000 or something. They think it's like investing in pot futures or something. I don't know. Is it realistic to think when you join taxi that you're going to end up making more money than the $300 you spent in your first year?
It's highly unlikely that that you will, and I will. Look, it's every musician has a dream, okay? Everyone who's ever picked up a guitar or picked up a microphone and sang, they all dream of making it big, of having their music on MTV, doing world tours, and I get that. I really do, and I was that person.
Really?
Thinking that, well,
you don't
maybe
seem
not.
like you have that kind of personality.
Well, let me rephrase that, meaning that I wanted to be successful.
Okay, that I'll buy.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and what a lot of people don't realize is that it just like anything, and music is certainly no exception. In order to make money, you have to invest money. You have to spend money to make. Okay, and as many as businessmen you ask who became successful, okay, a few of them can say that they made their investment right away, but most people will tell you that it took them a few years, and music is no exception. And expecting to make those $300 right away, it's a very unrealistic way of thinking of yourself in the long run. Because I have news for you. If you're in this for the long run, you're gonna be spending money for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether it's sample libraries, whether it's amps, whether it's guitars, whether it's the gas that you put in your car to take you to the gig, you're going to be spending money for the rest of your life. And it just so happens that this is a very competitive industry, whether you're a composer or a singer-songwriter or anything that you do that has to do with music. You have to see from the lens of the long run lens, not just the 6 months or the 1 year. You have to see it in 5 years, in 7, in 10, 15, as long as it takes you. And having the mindset that, okay, I spend $300 on taxi, or I spend $600 on this strings library, and I still haven't made any money out of it. So it's wasted money. Well, maybe you think that it's wasted money, but you're wasting your time thinking that it's wasted money.
Great observation.
Because you're gonna be spending money all your life, and I cannot begin to tell you how much I'm investing in terms of my equipment, my sample libraries, traveling, coming to the United States, coming to the Road Rally, coming to LA, going to New York, there is, as far as I'm concerned, it worked for me, and I know many, many other people who do the same thing. And it's just it's very unrealistic to think that just because you spend $300 on taxi that you've made it. No, you haven't. You made a small step in a very long journey. That's all you did.
Ooh, that's a great quote. Mark that down, Liz. Grandmaster, I see you in the chat room talking about religious stuff, which I have no problem with people being religious. Many of my friends and family members are themselves, but this is not the time or the place. So please cool it or we'll have to remove you from the chat room. Liz, one more comment like that. Okay. So I'm such a soft-hearted guy.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Okay, new members oftentimes ask when they get a critique back saying, man, this is pretty good. If only X, Y, or Z happened in this piece of music, I could have forwarded it. And the members will say, but why doesn't the screener forward it anyway and let the person at the library or the producer of the TV show or the director on the movie, let them decide? If it's close, why can't they decide? Why can't Taxi forward music that's close?
Well, okay, it's a very good question. And I can speak from experience because this has, when I was submitting music, it happened to me many times. And Taxi is given the brief, and Taxi, of course, publishes the brief to the members. Okay, the screeners, once I have every reason to believe that when the screeners read the briefs that they have in front of them, and I know for a fact that the screeners know very well how to do their job. I've met many of them over the years at their rally. They're not just people from selling hot dogs out in the street. They're people who know what they're doing.
Right.
Yeah. So if the screener feels that the cue, the piece of music, the song is close but no cigar, then they should not forward it, because they would just be wasting the time of the other person at the other end who's expecting music that fits the brief. So it's better to send 50 cues or 50 songs that are 100% or 110% accurate towards the brief than inundate whoever is on the other end with 200 things that may or may not work. That's just a waste of time, a waste of resources, and it just creates that chaotic situation that we spoke about before.
Yeah.
Why should the other person have to sit through and listen to stuff that it just won't work? I have a great analogy that I keep telling friends that and other composers who want to get into this. It's like you walk into a shoe store that sells boots, okay, or shoes in general, okay, and you're in there looking for a pair of green boots. Why, you may ask, green boots? Well, I like green boots. Okay. I like green boots. Okay. Now you go into the store and the shop owner tells you, I have red boots, I have brown boots, I have orange, I have any color but green, or I have this shade of green that it's not exactly green, and it's not the green that I have in mind, the customer. So why should the owner of the shop throw 50 different pairs of boots at me when he cannot sell me what I want? I said before.
Yeah, I use the shoe store analogy all the time. I actually worked in a shoe department in a department store, and I've used that same example, that if a lady comes in and says, I need a size 7.5 Potoswa pump with a 3.5-inch heel in beige to go with my bridesmaid dress at my best friend's wedding next weekend, I could bring out a pair of men's Baswegian penny loafers in Cordovan brown in a 9.5D and say, these are spectacularly good shoes. Yeah, but they're for a dude, number one. They're the wrong color, number two. They don't have a heel, number three. Right, so everybody gets the story when you're talking about shoes, but musicians, because they have a creative soul and an ego that goes along with that. They can't accept the fact that their thing is not right for that foot.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And as I said a little earlier, you have to be open and gracefully accept criticism, even though you think you may be so close to nailing it. But if you haven't nailed it, it doesn't mean you're a bad person, or you're going to be hanged or burned in effigy. It's just that somebody else was chosen. That such is life. Such is life, and the other person does not have to be inundated and be exposed to things that those 300 other pairs of shoes that they're not a good fit for them. No, they want those red shoes. They should get those red shoes and nothing else.
Absolutely. I hear this from a lot of our members, or successful composer members, many of whom are your friends, that they find it ironic that they put all this effort into becoming, not into becoming a great composer, they put all this effort into a particular piece, and they gave it all the bells and whistles, and then some other piece only had like 2 or 3 instruments in it. It's very stripped down, and they banged it out in 45 minutes, and that's the one that makes them money consistently year after year after year. Have you also had that experience that you've found maybe overall it's the simpler stuff that tends to get used the most?
That's a great question, Michael. This is a quote from the book, actually, that I'm going to say now. Complicated is easy, and easy is hard. Writing complicated music can be very easy, but writing easy music can be very hard. That's the meaning of this quote. And I will agree that as far as I'm concerned, many times, many of the simplest cues that I have ever written were the ones that actually worked like a charm in terms of getting placed, whether it was library music or as writing now the episodic TV, because what both of those things have in common, whether it's library or episodic, is that once they end up in any TV show, any piece of music you write will be sonically competing with a whole bunch of other things, with dialogue being the king.
Mm-hmm.
So your music ideally should never compete dialogue. And also sound effects, and there's also ambience. There's so many things that music can make or break a scene in terms of if your music clutters the scene or conflicts with the dialogue, then 9 out of 10 times, no, let me rephrase that, 20 out of 10 times your music will not be chosen. Yeah, and there's many things to be said about simplicity and being on point, writing on point, not exaggerating. Just I think that we write for media, whether it's TV, films, or video games, it complements whatever else is happening on top. It's not the top.
Right.
You should never think like that music is at the top.
Which is hard.
Which is something different.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. But you have to be in the mindset.
Absolutely. And you have to remember what your job is, not what your place is, but what your job is. Because musicians like, oh man, they don't care about the music. Well, they do care about the music, but they want it to enhance the whole thing, and support the mood and support the scene. Maybe add, an up-tempo thing to enhance the action, or maybe a thing with a lot of minor sevenths to enhance the tragedy in something, or depression. But it's not the actor, it's not the dialogue, and it's not the story.
Yes, 100%. And there's a great term for the music that we do, and that term is underscore. Underscore. It's under. It's not over. Okay. And you have to keep that in mind. And a lot of times to be able to achieve that is through simplicity. And I cannot begin to tell you how many times I've had cues that I thought this cue is the easiest thing I've ever put together, and musically most likely the worst thing I put together. But that cue has made so much money that I'm so glad I wrote it.
We hear that story a lot. Matt Hertz got one that he wrote many, many years ago, and he said it was like the simplest, most stripped down thing, banged it out quickly. And Matt, if you ever see this episode, please don't hate me if I misquote you here, but I want to say that he once told me it earns like $8,000 or $9,000 a year from just that one simple cue. So
yeah. When we spoke earlier, we spoke about the TV show Catfish. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a bunch of music on Catfish, but one cue that I wrote many years ago, probably 7-8 years ago, but right in the beginning when I was just getting my first forwards with Taxi, that cue that I wrote, which is probably 3 stereo tracks, nothing more than that. Probably a sequencer playing and something. It was. I'll send it to you at some point. Yeah, because it's a monument to what I'm about to say right now. That very simple cue, which by the way is called Quirkylicious.
I love it.
Has bought me most of this stuff that you see behind
From
you.
One cue.
From that cue, yeah. That
Wow.
simple, no-brainer cue that I thought, okay, a monkey can do that, and a monkey probably did.
Well, that's great. Speaking of how much money you've spent, I think a lot of people don't even attempt to learn how to make music for media because they think that they need a very fancy studio with walls built within walls and all kinds of heavy duty acoustic treatments, and tons of outboard gear in a console. You can't see it right now, but I'm sitting in front of a Neve console that's green screened in. But they get this impression that they need all this stuff. When you started out, did you have all this stuff that you do now?
No. My beginnings were very humble. I'm not. I can honestly say that. First of all, I had no clue what I was doing.
Awesome.
And and I learned. Okay, I keep saying that. I learned. I was inspired by so many wonderful people. We mentioned their names, and I'm gonna make a shout out now. Please forgive me. John Mazet, Matt Hurt, Chuck Schlachter, so many cool people that I've met and I've been inspired by them, and everyone was kind of feeding off of each other, and it like we said before, it doesn't happen overnight, and it's a slow process that you have to. You're not going to mortgage your house to have a Neve console in the beginning. Just buy a few, 2 or 3 decent sample libraries, learn them well. All these companies now, they before they release a library, they most likely they give it up for free in the beginning, or or they make demo versions for free. Get as many free stuff as you can, buy some stuff as well, and start building slowly. Once the money starts coming in, then invest in the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. You don't have to break the bank right away to be able to do this. It certainly can help if you have all this stuff laying on your hard drive and being able to recall any preset right away. I mean, especially now that I do the episodic TV stuff, yes, I do need everything, and I spend a lot of money on those things. But I'm able to do it now, and also if I want to compete now, I kind of have to do it.
Right.
Yeah,
but you're spending money to make money, but you were already making the money before you started spending it.
That's right. Yeah.
In order
to get started with taxi and writing the listings, all you need is 2 or 3 decent libraries, and work your way up from that.
What would you start out with today if you were a brand new taxi member, but you had the knowledge that you've got now about different libraries? Which ones would you purchase as your everyday go-to library?
I would probably right away start with Native Instruments Contact. That and most probably Omnisphere, but I would say Contact first, Native Instruments Contact, because Contact besides the Contact is basically a sample player or a synth sample player, and besides all the libraries that the company Native Instruments makes in-house that work with Contact, there's hundreds, if not thousands, of third-party developers who write incredibly useful and musical libraries that work within Contact right away. I would say that 3/4 of that I own runs on Contact.
Wow.
And it's become such an incredibly popular library, not just on the user base but on the developer base, Contact, that I would thoroughly recommend investing in Contact. And once you invest in Contact, then buying libraries from the third-party developers, because there's such an incredible amount of good stuff that's being sold that works in Contact.
And are you Pro Tools or Logic or something else for your DAW?
Actually, I'm using Digital Performer.
Really? And
yes.
And do the other composers that you work with as part of a team also use Digital Performer, or is it okay to intermarry? You create a track on Digital Performer and then send it to them, and they take the session, put it in Pro Tools.
A couple of them do, yeah, but it's like Hans Zimmer once said, it's not what do you have, it's what you do with it that that works. So at the end of the day, as long as what comes out of here and I send out the way it should sound, they don't really care what I use.
And there's no compatibility issue going back and forth?
Not really. Sometimes when the couple of guys who actually use Digital Performer, we may exchange the entire session instead of just the audio files. They make session and they just opens right away in mine. But even if they don't send me this, if somebody works in Logic or Pro Tools, all they need to send me is the audio files, and then. Or I need to send them my audio files, because at the end of the day, that's what gets used, the WAV files and.
You're talking about the mix.
Whatever.
You're talking about the mix. You're not sending full sessions to anybody. Just all they want is the mix. And if your lead composer hears something and goes, doesn't really work with the first 20 minutes of the show that I composed. Can you go back and add more Christmas bells because it's a holiday episode? That kind of stuff happens?
Yeah, it could be the entire mix, or it could be stems, because a lot of times I'm required to stem everything out. It may not be the entire mix. I stem everything out, and I also stem my aux buses, so that they can have the dry version and the effect version as well.
And now I've got to ask you, because I know guitar, other than Monica, guitar, and your children, of course, guitars are the love of your life. What are your 2 or 3 favorite guitars?
I've always kind of been a Fender guy. Yeah, but to be able to do what I do now, I have a bunch. I mean, I have, of course, Les Paul, I have PRS, I have my Fenders, I have a whole bunch of acoustics. I mean, I even have a ukulele.
Nice.
Yeah, because different guitars sound different, and it's not. Let's say if I'm doing a metal cue, a heavy metal cue, I'm not gonna use the Fender, the Stratocaster. It just won't cut it, And it really depends on what sound you're trying to achieve. But let me just get my Fender on the shot for a moment.
Okay. Sweet. I've got to tell you, my
this guitar makes money.
my father-in-law was given a Strat in that exact same finish the first year, whatever the first year was that they made Strats. He was a kid. His parents bought him one for Christmas, and he still has the original Strat from back in I don't know what the first year was, 55 or 60. No, it was before 65. Whatever that was, he still has. Are you
kidding me? Really?
He still has it, and the only thing wrong with it is little chrome is off the tuning keys. He pulls it out once a year, plays a couple of Christmas songs on it, puts it back in the original case, puts it away for a year. So he's had that thing forever. Anyway, I digress, but I also drool. I've only seen it once, but it's.
I know.
Let's see. We've still got 3 minutes left. I'm looking to see if there's anything I have. Let's spend the next couple minutes talking about how you expanded the genres that you work in. I remember you mentioned that you were comfortable in a couple, and then you figured out pretty soon that you had to learn several others, or many others. How do you go about expanding your musical vocabulary and learning the other genres?
Okay, I'll start by saying that one of the biggest benefits I've had since joining Taxi back in the day was that I've tried so many times to get out of my comfort zone and write for things that I wouldn't dare to do, genres that I wouldn't dare to do, and looking back at it now and connecting the dots, that has been, I've been to Berkeley, but those years of writing every day in all those different genres, I've learned so much in terms of being able to execute something and do it realistically. And if it hadn't been for Taxi, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Wow.
Back to the question though. Basically, when you listen to any piece of music, and you have basic knowledge of music harmony and theory and things like that, and you start that make a piece of work in the genre that it's been written in, then once you figure those little bits and pieces out, then you either try to play them effectively, whether it's on a guitar or I don't know, maybe on the piano, and try to experiment and record try again and try again, and see whether what you have sounds remotely close or close enough to the thing that you heard initially. Okay, so I guess since YouTube and Spotify now have any piece of music, anything you can imagine and beyond, all you need to do is listen with a critical ear and try to figure out the big elements or the smaller elements that make any piece of music sound the way it sounds. It could be the production, it could be the instruments, it could the melody, it could be the harmony, it could be the rhythm, the tempo. So all these things together, they make up a piece of music, and the more you do it, the better you become at it, for sure.
Well, you've clearly become good at it. We're at the end of the show. We've run out of time, but please hold up the book. I want people to buy this book. It's not a how-to. The interesting thing is the book doesn't say, if you want to score a dramedy cue, do this. There are a couple of other great books out there that we all know that do that very effectively. But keep holding it up. Don't be shy. This book is like reading Paul Zolo's classic book, Songwriters on Songwriting. This is composers on composing. And there's so much to be learned from reading their own words. How many? You've got like 36 interviews or something in there. It's a lot.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well,
and not just composers, industry people,
right?
Music supervisors, agents, managers, lawyers, music editors. Anyone who's anyone in the music industry is in this very book right here.
Well, you could have left the lawyers out. I definitely want to have you on a panel at the Road Rally. You are not only a delightful person and adorable, I might say, but you are...
Likewise.
Thank you. You are such a good guy, and you're like the heart of every taxi member. Everybody should emulate what you do, because you do it with such honesty and grace and tenacity and all that stuff. I want you to know from the bottom of my heart that from that first time I met you at the Road Rally, that huge smile on your face till this moment right now, I could not be more proud of you. Just congratulations.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've always held you in the highest regards myself, and you've always been a stand-up guy, and I would just like to say that the industry needs more people like you.
Thank you, Adonis. We can hope. I mean, it's a big compliment, but yes, it's so much easier to be honest and nice. I find it easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And let's make it a date for the rally then.
Absolutely, which I believe it's November 3rd through the 7th in Los Angeles, live this year. The only thing that will stop us is if there's like another major COVID outbreak and things get really bad again, then we would go virtual. But we're determined to do it live this year. We've signed the contract with the hotel, and talking to members, people want to come. So I think it's going to be amazing. Really what they want to come for is to meet people like you. What a thrill it would be for a brand new member to get you as their mentor at the Road Rally, or to sit down and have lunch or a beer with you. That would be amazing. And you will see me maybe before the rally, because I should be back out here sometime during the summer, and maybe I'll take my wife for a little weekend trip to Cyprus and come and say hi.
Lunch is on me.
Okay, I'll hold you to that. I look forward to meeting Monica as well, and your teenage daughter, so I can give them a stern lecture about being nice to their daddy.
Okay,
anyway,
great.
Adonis, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for staying up so late. For Adonis and me, it's 11:34 p.m. right now, so thank you, buddy. I appreciate it a bunch. I'll send you a link when it's up on YouTube, and let's talk sooner than later, okay?
It's been a pleasure. Have a good night, and my regards to your family as well.
Thank you, Adonis. Adonis Aletras, ladies and gentlemen.